Hi, thanks for joining us for Turn the Page with Paige, brought to you by the Goddard Schools. I'm your host, Paige Holsey. In this series, we love to learn the story behind the bedtime stories that children are enjoying by introducing you to the local authors and illustrators that make those works of fiction come to life. Today's author is introducing children to the concept of adoption, as well as the many emotions and feelings that come with it in her book, Bandit and Pablo, a dog and a cat who become siblings through adoption. Author Katie Kibort-Gibbons from St. Louis joins us here in studio. Katie, so glad that you are here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And you brought some friends, too.
I did. I brought Bandit and Pablo with me.
So where did you get the idea for their story?
I always knew I wanted to write a children's book on adoption. Ever since I was adopted, my children are adopted, I just didn't know what I wanted it to be. And the more I thought about doing it, and I, of course, love my cat and my dog, I started thinking what a great concept for adoption, because so many people adopt pets.
Right.
And with so many different types of adoption, it seemed easier for children to grasp the concept of it by simply using animals.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about Bandit and Pablo and what happens in their book and the story itself.
This first book, We Are Brothers, is simply introducing that idea that we came from two different places, we were adopted in two different ways, and now we're a family, now we're brothers. And just that idea that that's how families are sometimes formed.
Absolutely. The theme of family and adoption obviously very prominent in this book, as it is through your own life and in your own family. You shared that you are adopted and your sons are also adopted. Gives you such a rich understanding and I think multiple perspectives of adoption.
Absolutely.
How did that influence your book?
I think a big part, like I said, I knew I always wanted to write a children's book about adoption because there's a lot of emotions that go with it that people don't understand when they're not adopted. I was adopted in 1970, don't mean to date myself, but back then it was all confidential. You know, it was not open like many adoptions today. My boys were adopted internationally from Belarus, completely also different than my experience. So with all these ideas of how kids become families and siblings and what adoption can look like, I wanted to try to just grasp all of that to help children understand that A, you're not alone. There's a lot of us out there that maybe have these feelings, even adults, and that also other kids can understand what their friend or their sibling or their cousin feels like sometimes being adopted.
Absolutely. And that thought of feelings, and I think sometimes it's important for us to remember you can feel multiple feelings at the same time.
Absolutely.
And it seems like this book could be such a great launching pad, a great conversation starter for caregivers and children. And you mentioned this, whether those children are the ones who are adopted or if they want to learn more about their classmate. What conversations do you hope that this starts?
I hope it does become more of just this open concept of understanding that, like you said, you can feel multiple things. A child can feel sad for a moment because they don't know their background, their history, but then be so happy and love their family so much. I also mention on the back of my book that I'm a therapist also, and I work with families and children who have been touched by adoption, and I started noticing these kids that I'm working with as a therapist are expressing and feeling the same things I felt so many decades ago that my kids felt growing up. And that also was just such a motivator for me to put this into a book.
Yeah, and I think that this makes it, being a children's book, it's such a great medium to start that conversation because adoption is a heavy topic, and this makes it more accessible, I think, and the pictures especially, being Bandit and Pablo, a dog and cat. So I want to talk more about the illustrations by Kelly O'Neill and the real pets, too, who inspired them.
Right.
So why did you choose to have a dog and a cat rather than humans, I guess, for lack of a better word?
Much more appealing, I think, to a child. They're adorable. Look at them. I think kids love animals. Yeah. So number one, when thinking of illustrations, just that. Number two, I just feel it's easier for children maybe to understand some heavier concepts when they see cute animals, something that maybe isn't specifically humans. It just felt like an easier way to present that concept.
It probably makes it more relatable since it doesn't look like a specific child, too.
Exactly.
And I think your illustrator did such a great job. So they don't look like a specific child, but they look like a real dog and cat. Yours, right?
Yes.
Are yours actually named Bandit and
Bandit
Pablo?
and Pablo,
Okay.
the very real ones, yes.
And the resemblance is great. What did you think when you saw some of the first illustrations from Kelly?
Oh, I was blown away. Just finding her was amazing. And when I saw her sketches, I thought, oh my gosh, those are exactly them. Then when she added color to them, it's like they couldn't be more perfect.
I want to talk specifically about one of the pages when the children are in the car with one of the adopted animals. That is based on a real picture, right?
It is. And so that's my son, Alex, adopted from Belarus, and our daughter, my husband and I's daughter, Kendra. We went to pick up Bandit, adopt him from the APA, and driving home, they're young adults fighting over who gets to hold the puppy. So we made them, put him in the middle, and I, of course, took a picture of it, and I sent that to Kelly. It's like, if you could get this in the book. And so it is. That's them with little Bandit on his adoption day.
I love that backstory in that picture specifically. Hopefully this is just first of many, first in a series.
Yes, I have 2 stories that are in the series that I'm working on, written, but now need to get to Kelly. I'm hoping by the end of this year to have those done, and I'm just very excited about them. They all are just going to touch upon these issues and situations that adopted kids can find themselves in.
What a great resource for them. But you already have this great coloring book out. Tell me more about
that.
I
do.
Example.
Yes. So Bandit and Pablo, the coloring activity book, trying to stick with this theme of adventures that they go on to together. It is just beautiful. Kelly did the illustrations, the coloring pages on this too. And so there's mazes, word searches, pictures that kids can use their imagination to bring these adventures to life.
It's packed, it's huge, so it's a great full activity book as well. Okay, well, you know we always wrap up with a question. Do you have a recommendation for another children's book by another author or illustrator?
I do. There's a book sticking with this theme of things adopted kids can relate to, and it's called Yes, I'm Adopted. And it's a very cute story about just what it's like in the day of a boy who's adopted.
That sounds really wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that recommendation. Thank you for bringing us these stories as well. So glad to meet you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Looking forward to the ones to come later in the series as well.
Thank you, Paige.
I want to thank you at home for joining us today as well for Turn the Page with Paige. We hope to see you back here again soon.